here we are. And thanks for both of you guys being on this one. You know, normally on the subcommittees, we don't have a chair or vice chair. You guys are kind of treated as co-equals, so we can do it that way. For the public safety subcommittee, we did decide to have a chair. It's kind of informal though, but I think Joaquin was made the chair, but generally don't need one. But here we are. This is the HR subcommittee. Lisa is, it's her show today, so I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Robert and Joaquin, for joining us today. We have a bit of a lengthy agenda, even though it doesn't seem like it on paper. So I've broken it down into different parts to be able to discuss it and then give you all an opportunity to ask questions. I'm going to share my screen. So that way we can do the PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. So for the agenda today, obviously we called it to order. I thought we'd go through, I broke it down. So I thought we'd go through the classification and compensation study overview and results. And then of course, go through the proposed personnel reinstatements and new classifications. This was all mentioned in the memo that was distributed to you today. So I know you may have some questions after reviewing it. And most of the information I will reiterate as I'm going through the slides. So first, I just wanted to call your attention to the compensation philosophy. This was actually put together in 2019 when Bob first got here. It was something that actually had been promised in the MOU and negotiations with, I believe, represented management team. So, and what it did was it actually set goals for us when we are doing these type of things in terms of compensation. And as you see, basically it states that subject to our current and future fiscal health, the city shall endeavor to set top step salaries within 10% of the median of the agencies identified based upon geographic location, labor market, and cost of living in San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara regional areas, with the similarity of population, staff, and scope of services provided.
Recording in progress.
Consultant who did our class and comp study used, and with that group of cities, they determined the actual median. And as I go through the results, you'll see what we actually came up with. I wanted to add that it did say the city shall endeavor. That means we will do everything within our power to get there. It won't necessarily mean that every single time will be within 10%, depending on what the circumstances are. We are fortunate this time that we are able to kind of, with what we have in place, get there by the recommendations we're bringing forward now. Do you guys have any questions about the compensation philosophy? I know it's kind of brand new to you. And again, this was actually done in 2019 and is the basis of what the class and comp study followed.
You're going to show us the list of those comparative cities now as part of this?
I can show you that.
I wasn't sure, so that's why I was asking.
Okay, I can actually show you a page from the report that shows the comparables.
And Robert, you might recall, because I think you just started on council, so maybe this was hitting you right when you started. I can't remember, but it was definitely on my to-do list right when I was hired that this was in the works. And yeah, I remember we met in closed session a couple times, and we wordsmithed this sentence because at one point we were maybe going to list the cities in the policy, and then we decided not to. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I really do. So let me see.
So in correlation with the labor groups, both Local 39 and RMT, these are the lists. Now, as you see, the comparables may not actually always be as similar as we'd like, but we felt to be a sound decision making, we have to look at Bay Area cities. Because if we start comparing to, for example, we did actually use, I believe it wasn't on here.
I don't know what these column headings, rows.
So.
I'm sorry, columns, okay.
we have
Full-time positions, okay.
These are the ones that we use. As you'll see, they're all San Mateo County cities. So Belmont, Brisbane, Burlingame, Daly City, East Palo Alto, and if I'm going too fast, let me know.
Well, it looks like it's all the San Mateo cities, all 20, right?
Except Redwood City.
Got it.
Because of the size and just because of the area around it, but the median, so using San Mateo County, I think gave us a fairly clear picture of where we are in terms of the Bay Area and our workers.
And would they be able to add a population size column also of the cities at some point?
Sure, we could do that.
I think would be helpful, not just for this, but sometimes, you know, when we get this, oh, you're so overstaffed.
You know, I think there's a page in our budget where we include the populations of all the cities for that exact reason. We think it's relevant information for both the council and the public. So I will check our budget, but I'm pretty sure we provide that every year.
Yeah, I think you're right. It might be an interesting column to add in here too. So it'll be useful for comparison purposes.
Morro Bay, but we did not include it when we were developing the median, just because, as you probably know, the Morro Bay, even though they are very similar to us in their structure and TOT dependency, their salary base in the Central Coast is much different. The CPI, everything is much different on the Central Coast than it is
right.
in the area. So, but we did.
Well, it's interesting. Menlo Park, don't they only have about 35,000 people or something like that? And they've got 286 full-time employees. Interesting.
Our comparables, and and we did find that with some of the classifications, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint.
They're probably a full service city, I'm guessing.
Menlo Park does have their own fire and police.
Yeah, still, that seems crazy. Okay, good to know. All right, thank you for that. That helps.
And Menlo Park does not have their own fire. The Menlo Park Fire District is like the Coastside Fire Protection District. So that number's without having their own fire.
Sorry, you're right. I totally forgot about that. I just keep thinking of Menlo.
But they might have own police and they might have own sewer and water.
Yeah, yeah.
Those departments add up.
And police definitely adds up. And then we know that was half of our, or like a third of our population of our FTEs. So classification compensation. So the background, as you may have read, and Robert, you may have been part of this original decision, part of the 2018 negotiations with the representative management team included a classification, well, the development not only of the compensation philosophy, but also the classification compensation study being done. Through all the turnovers in this particular department, including in HR, there was a lot of delay in getting this classification compensation done. When I started, they had just selected a vendor. We were just starting to work on it. We had met with the labor groups and then COVID hit. So once COVID hit and immediately we were thrust into that financial crisis because all the hotels shut down and TOT literally disappeared. The labor groups actually agreed to postpone. R&T agreed to postpone the class and compensation study to the following year so that we could actually kind of get through the pandemic and get back on our feet so that we could truly study this without the cost of it hanging over our head. So in last year, mid last year, we finally began the process. We had to change vendors because CPS, who was our original vendor, actually decided that the project wasn't something they wanted to continue. And so we actually enlisted Bochet Law to help us with the class and comp study. It was a very lengthy process. We divided it up into two groups. Phase one included representative management team. Phase 2 included Local 39 group plus confidential, which at this time is only really one employee. So once that was done, once both phases were completed, and I should talk to you about the process. So Margaret Ramirez was our consultant on this, and very quickly, how the process took place was she actually went in, she looked at job specifications. So she did not at all go by title. She went on the content of the job specifications and compared the languages until she found a like position or like classification in that other city. So sometimes in the report, there will be identified an actual different title, but the actual job specification was very similar. She then conducted interviews with every single employee. They had completed position questionnaires. And then after that was all done, she began writing the report and highlighted the need for some changes that needed to be done. As I mentioned in the actual memo that I gave you, we're doing fairly well in comparison to the Bay Area market. So for represented management group, we were trending below we were actually within 10% of the median at 8.24% below the market median. And then with Local 39 and the confidential classifications, we were trending 2.12% below the market. So in comparison, we are actually doing fairly well. Of course, they did find, and that's what we're going to talk about next. They did find some classifications that we truly needed to look at that were much more below the median than the 10% that we like to go for. And they're actually significant positions that, of course, when we go to recruit, if there is a need to recruit, we need to actually be competitive. And this is one of the things that the class and comp study was designed to do, is to help the city be competitive when it is time for recruitment, and also, of course, help us in retention of the current employees that we do have. So the results included, and I'm going to do it bullet point by bullet point so that we can stop and if you have any questions. But the first finding that was of significance was our public works superintendent. The study found that the classification was below market by 34.34%. So after reading Margaret's review, we recommend that we'd like to place this classification into an already existing salary range that would bring it basically 10% below the median. I believe it's actually 10.02%. So as we said, we're trying to get it there, but it still brings it more significantly towards the median. The current salary range, so just to give you an idea, the current salary range, the top step is $10,356. The new salary range would be $12,644.
Per month, right? Right.
Yes, that's monthly. And this is purely salary. Right now, we're only talking about actual salary numbers.
Got it. So, and when this individual goes to salary range 10,525, they will go to a lower step than their current
Generally,
range, with the potential for higher.
Yes. Generally, we try to do the whole 5%. They at least would do a 5% jump because otherwise they would just go step to step. So we're still looking into the most kind of practical way to do this, because I do believe he's already at step 5. So
how many steps are there in the city?
there's 5 steps in our
Oh,
salary.
okay. See, that's good to know. I came from 10-step salary ranges in the federal government, so you never got to the 10th step usually because you got promoted into another thing before you ever got to it. But that's, so you're saying that would be basically a 5% increase in salary. So if this person's currently making 120,000 a year, they would be getting a $6,000 increase over the year divided by 12 months.
And
I'm just using rough numbers, but I mean, that's roughly what we're talking about, just so we'll.
yes, and the numbers are actually in the fiscal impact of the memo I gave you, just the changes to the incumbent. And we are actually proposing doing retroactive for these people because of the delay and because it's significantly, we found such a significant breach and difference in the salary where they should be. The Bochet law actually recommended us thinking about going retroactive for these employees because the salary and it wouldn't go far back. We're proposing July 1st of this last year, but we're still kind of in negotiations about that. And also in regards to the salary class and comp study, originally it was actually to be done in 2018, knowing that these positions that I'm talking about today were actually highlighted as being significantly below market back then. So
the numbers that I'm seeing on page 2 of your memorandum, where you're saying to the fiscal year 21-22 impact, and then the estimated future fiscal year impact, those 2 columns, and says changes to incumbents, which is what we're looking at right now, 1 through 6 of the results. Does that include a retroactive bump, those numbers?
yes,
It does.
So,
okay.
see, there's 2 columns. It has fiscal year 21-22 impact and then estimated future fiscal impact. So I had my finance expert break it out into 2 different columns.
Right.
So the fiscal year 21-22 is what it would cost us for this entire fiscal year. And that's actually for all the incumbents, that amount, not just for one.
Okay.
And then, okay. And so then the next is one that actually should have been studied long before it was even promised into RMT. Our recreation coordinator, our consultant actually met with the incumbent, did some deep research because when she looked at the job specification, she found that in other cities, this position was in a much higher titled job class. And so we are recommending that we rename the coordinator to truly reflect what the position does, which is recreation supervisor, and then also revising or increasing the salary to actually, again, match the responsibilities that the position has taken on.
So you're saying that this person, if you looked at the job description of a recreation coordinator this person currently has, they were doing way more than that after being interviewed, and therefore their job description was what they were actually doing was much more the job description of a recreation supervisor, correct?
Yes, and in some cases, well, actually, I should clarify, their job spec has not changed. They were hired knowing they would have these responsibilities and never complained. I should throw that out there. However, when we did the class study and she was looking, she came back and told me that the job spec itself, when she looked at similar language in other cities, she was looking at supervisors, managers. There was a great discrepancy in the titles. The job specs were very similar, which that's
Got
what
it.
she looked at.
So when we do the full meeting in March, when we bring our recommendations forward to council, as part of the staff report, it might be useful to have the two job descriptions, what the coordinator job description looks like, and then the recreation supervisor. And so we can say, this person's already doing the supervisor stuff, but they're stuck in a salary range for a coordinator. Does that make sense?
It does, but so I can figure out how to do that because the spec was actually compared to all those other cities that you saw on the list. So there was more than just one specification. But the language can actually, I can actually word it.
We can just attach our own job class. We wouldn't attach all the other ones, but just our own.
Right, because what I mean is we're going to create a new job description unless we already have one for supervisor. Do we have one already?
No,
No, we're using the same one.
Sorry, Robert, I must not be clear. So that is actually what we're saying. The job description itself is that of a recreation supervisor. It's mistitled. It should be a supervisor.
I see.
Yeah,
But if I look at the job description of a recreation coordinator that we currently have,
it actually is mistitled because it matches similar positions in other.
So you're saying the description is accurate that we currently have? Because that's what I was asking before. Maybe you misunderstood me because I was saying, are you saying that the coordinator description, people are doing way more than the current job description of a coordinator? And you said, yeah, therefore it should have been a rec supervisor. So you're saying that the coordinator description is just fine, except that it's mistitled because they're really doing the job of a recreation supervisor, right?
Exactly. That's where I got confused because the job, he is doing more than that title describes. So the actual job description is correct.
Right. Not more than more than the title, not more than the description. I just think we should be really clear when we go before the council so they'll get it also, and the public will understand that.
I appreciate that.
No, that's great. Good.
Okay. So we are creating a new salary schedule for this position. But we are looking at it, the top step. So the current top step he's at is, of course I don't have that on my sheet of paper. We are increasing it to 8977.50. That will be his current. He was actually below the median of the relevant labor market by 40.93%. So we're bringing him to within 10% of the median. So that is a significant increase. And he will again be, but it does truly match what his peers are doing in the labor market with similar responsibilities.
So what sort of bump would they be getting? You said for number one, it was a 5% bump in salary immediately. What about number two?
Even if we put him at the beginning of the new salary range, it probably will be more than 5%. His current, and I believe Eddie is at the first, I believe the position is at the current 5th step, and I'm looking it up now, and he is at $7,078 if he's at the 5th step. And he will be going to, we have to create the range, and my consultant is working on that, but it would actually be a minimum of 5% that he would get. So we would actually put him at a range that would give him a significant increase to get him within. The idea of increasing their salary ranges is getting them to within the 10% of the median, which is our compensation philosophy adopted by the council. So that is what we're working with. Some of them may be 5%. Others we may have to readjust. The next one I'm going to talk about is a little higher than 5%.
This one, number two, almost is like a 20% increase bump, isn't it?
Well, the salary range is, yes.
In the well, I thought, okay.
So depending on, but it gets a little confusing on where they're going in the range. However, the final numbers I'll have for council, and whatever the final number is what brings them within 10%. So yes, it may be more than 5%. Going to the first step might be, that range actually might get them completely into the range or into the 10%. So they may be able to go and get a 5% and go to the first step. Other people may need to go higher to get them within the 10%.
Right, got it. Okey doke.
So any questions?
Joaquin, you have any questions on that one, or is that good to go?
No, no questions. I mean, it's clear to understand that that they're just I guess that job that we're doing was mistitled.
Right. And by being mistitled, it put them in a different salary
Yeah.
class, and therefore they were being underpaid. So for a couple of years. So,
So the next one is a compaction issue. We have a series of management analysts, which right now is labeled project manager, but is known as the management analyst classification. And then we have a senior management analyst, which is, those are flexibly staffed, even though there does have to be recruitments in place. Because it is considered a series, there should be a significant, there should be a difference of more than 5% between the salaries, so that if somebody gets promoted from management analyst to a senior management analyst, there's not a compaction issue. Currently, there's only a 3% difference in these base salaries for these positions. So we are recommending to correct the salary schedule, and we are changing it so that there will now be a 6.24% difference between the two salary schedules, and the compaction issue will end. This impacts 4 employees that are in the senior management analyst classification. Fortunately, it's not a huge, fortunately, they have not, it's not a huge difference. But again, compaction is an issue we try to avoid. We talk about it in our labor agreements, in our MOUs. So the fact that we have waited so long to correct this was concerning. So we definitely want to act on it this time around.
good.
Okay, and then the salary schedule of the recreation leader. So this is now going into Local 39.
Lisa, I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question? Are the slides supposed to be advancing or no?
No.
Okay.
Right now I'm doing results, recommendations, and then cost all at
Got it.
once.
It wasn't changing on my screen, so I wasn't sure. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's not. I did the bullet points and I'm doing all the talking.
Good question. We would have been way behind on the slides, Matthew, if that wasn't good.
Yeah, a little delayed to ask, sorry.
No,
I'm
good. I'm glad you asked.
journalist when it comes to PowerPoint slides, so my apologies. So in Local 39, we actually fared a bit better with our median. The entire group on average was only 2.2% below the median overall. However, in studying the classifications, we did find that the recreation leader series 1, 2, and 3 were actually significantly lower than their peers in the other jurisdictions. We actually right now currently have a rec leader 3 and a rec leader 2. And so we are looking to put them into a different salary range. And this salary range we do have to create, but the top step would be $4,030. And that would put us within 10% of the median. And then based on that number, we will create the other salaries for the next 2 series. So that's for 3. And then we will also create for the 2 and the 1, the salary schedules that match that.
What was the top level for the senior manager analyst at the salary range? Top step, I'm sorry.
Top step for the senior manager analyst right now is 9,747.
Okay. So this recreation leader, that top step would go to 4,000.
Yes.
Hey, Joaquin, do you realize by Bay Area standards, that's low income?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Almost bordering on very low income.
It's
Yep, that's where we live. Great.
low income, but not extreme low income.
No,
Not
that's right.
extremely, no.
Wait, it's low income, very low income, and then extreme low income. Are those the three levels, or right? Yeah.
Yep.
And
What a
currently,
world. What a world. Okay.
our new salary top step at this 3 level would be $4,000.
Yeah, that's
So
what I saw. Yeah, that's what I was basing it on.
currently, the top step is 3,612. So we would
Okay. All right.
bring these salary ranges into play. The next one does not have a cost to it. But we would rename the project manager classification to management analyst, so that we actually clean up our job specs. And now the series is clearly defined. We have the management analyst and then the senior management analyst.
No, that's great, because people coming from different walks of life have a whole different sense of what a project manager is and an analyst, and their
Exactly.
expectations around that. And I certainly see that in my current job, and it creates a big dilemma for people. If you're a project manager or a project manager or a program manager, that's what I was searching for. And boy, does that create confusion
And it's funny, when we've gotten called from other jurisdictions doing their own salary studies, they're always trying to find our management analyst. So,
yeah.
so they'll just clean up our files, and we're slowly in HR working to clean up things so that they're easier to understand.
Right.
Last but not least, so
Lisa, if you don't mind, ask a question of Robert. So Robert, this is more just of curiosity. So
Yeah.
in the worlds that you move in, how is program manager being used generally? Because what we've noticed is recently that title has started to be kind of preferred as a working title for certain employees. And so I'm just curious, in the world that you run in, how is program manager? What level is that typical? What does it mean?
Well, it's higher, if you're running if you're running a whole program, you could use a project manager to keep all the different pieces on step. You might be running a program with so many different pieces to it.
So it's a higher manager than project manager generally.
Typically.
Yeah, okay.
And it can get really confusing and
Got it.
Yeah. So anyway.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, and then with Local 39, that was the only salary schedule change that was recommended, but we also included the confidential group. And currently, our senior accountant is a member of the confidential group, and doing the comparison to the duties that he currently is the incumbent is doing now, and interviewing and doing the comparison to the finance manager job spec, which we have found are similar, but obviously different. The consultant has recommended that we reclassify the senior accountant to finance manager moving forward. It was my understanding that when we did the recruitment, we actually recruited for senior accountant / finance manager, so that our applicant pool would be a bit more broad and give us a better choice. And as you know, the last 2 years have been very unprecedented when it's come to our finances. So the incumbent has taken on additional responsibilities, especially since the administrative services director was more of an HR person and not a finance person. So moving forward, the responsibilities will only increase, including what they're doing now. So the consultant actually did recommend that we look at reclassifying moving forward. This is not a retroactive action, that we reclassify the senior accountant to finance manager to match the responsibilities that the incumbent does have now.
And just as another comparison between, now when someone gets a manager title, that doesn't necessarily mean they have reports, correct?
True.
And it doesn't matter. It's just a higher level of expertise. And again, my God, that creates confusion in public and private sector. But I just wanted to point that out, that not necessarily. So, good, okay.
And in this scenario, our finance person does have direct reports,
Mhm.
free, and and I believe we actually recommend in our finance manager, not recommend, we don't require, I'm missing the word I'm looking for, but we hope that the person comes in with a CPA, which currently our senior accountant does have. So
That's right. Good.
But for example, our management analyst, even though it has management in the title, they don't typically manage employees.
Right.
Hence the confusion that Robert was talking about. Yeah, we agree. There's that confusion in the public sector job class world.
Yeah, okay, great. Did you have any questions, Joaquin, on that, or?
that was the.
I'm okay.
No, no
classification.
questions.
Okay,
Okay. So that was all of the classification and compensation study recommendations that we were bringing forward. I got some good feedback, thank you, on the stuff that I will need prior to coming to council. The next thing we'd like to talk about, and now Matthew, I'm advancing my slide, is the reinstatement of positions. So a little background. Joaquin was not here yet, but Robert, you were a part of this. As mentioned before, due to the pandemic, the city was thrust into a financial crisis. Our TOT basically dropped the month of April 2020 and following those months to minimal amounts, well below what we had predicted our budget to be. So in order to compensate for that, in order to keep the city running fully to serve the public, we had to make some difficult decisions, which included not only a furlough of all the employees of the city, which they all did, but also the layoff of 5 positions. So I'm sorry, 6 positions.
6 positions. One was vacant.
The 2 maintenance workers, 1 vacant, 1 filled. We had an executive assistant, 1 HR analyst, 1 account technician, and then, oh my God, what am I missing? And 1 recreation leader. So that happened in May of 2020. Thankfully, we actually did rebound, and in July of 2021, we were able to bring back the recreation leader and the maintenance worker. So now we're coming back to you, or we will be coming back to council to request bringing back the HR analyst, the executive assistant, and also the vacant maintenance worker to allow Public Works to fill.
Analyst, maintenance worker.
And of course, as I mentioned in the memo, we would plan to bring this to mid-year, and this is of course dependent on finance clarifying that we've met what our proposed revenues, that our revenues met our projections. And so that would mean that we could afford to bring them back. Mid-year will also include the surplus from the previous year as well. So we would not bring these back unless we meet our projected revenues and we feel that we can properly fund them.
And I appreciate you pointing that out. And as you know, I'll be wearing 2 hats. You know, I'm on this subcommittee. I'm also on the finance subcommittee. So we'll be able to integrate what we're learning here to prepare for, you know, that piece there. So let's have a look. So I'm pretty good with the analyst, the maintenance worker. I'm wondering about whether or not you want an executive assistant there or someone with the title of administrative assistant. Because I know historically, if you put it as an executive assistant.
So actually, one thing I forgot to mention previously, and I should have mentioned this in the report, is the difference between the executive assistant and an administrative assistant is confidential. So
it's what?
is the fact that the executive is a confidential position and administrative assistant is not confidential.
In public sector, by confidential, what we mean is that they actually have access to labor. So they are not represented because they actually assist the city manager and or the deputy city manager and potentially the HR director or the admin services director in anything related to labor negotiations. They may sit in and record discipline hearings. They are termed confidential. So that is the difference between the executive assistant and the admin assistant.
Does that also switch from an exempt to a non-exempt position or
Yeah,
not?
They are.
yeah,
That's what I figured. Okay.
it's exempt.
Yes,
Question.
I meant it the other way around from non-exempt to exempt. Yeah, okay.
Let me try to understand this one. So this executive assistant position, that be working for who? Is that working for under to assist who?
That for me primarily, Joaquin, but it's in the city manager's office. And the position works for me and also works for Matthew, and then is also available to serve all the department heads on projects, on the kind of the higher level projects that have a thread that, are kind of corporate wide endeavors. But so yeah, primarily me, and then second Matthew, and then the larger endeavors that come out of our office.
And then also,
this
yeah, go ahead,
position,
Joaquin.
this position, what the city had it before?
Yeah, when we went into the pandemic, it was one of the 6 positions laid off. I had a person right outside my office, and that position was laid off. We let that person go.
And you get to select at which level you bring that person in of that salary step. So,
Well, my questions are like knowing about your the description of your job with the Matthew's description of his job and with this executive assistant, how do they overlap? I mean, it's new to me, but I just want to understand, the position of the executive assistant to how that position overlaps with your positions.
Sure. Well, I'll start and then I'll let Matthew jump in. To be honest with you, when I came here, that position was filled. And so the person had been working for my predecessor. And as I understand it, I believe the position was probably 100% devoted to the city manager. My approach, and after almost 2 years of not having an assistant and going, living in the world we're living in now, maybe I've made certain adjustments. Obviously, I've made certain adjustments, but my approach is one where I want to share and take a team approach to everything we do. So I don't feel I have a need for 100% of an executive assistant, and so my attitude is these resources are for the entire team. They work for the public, they work for the city. And so that's just the culture that we have here up in the city manager's office. And so she is available, or the person is available to work for others. And so Matthew, as the deputy city manager, is right next to my office, and the position sits outside of both our offices. And a lot of the work that obviously Matthew and I do, we do together. Certain things are assigned to him, certain things I take on, but there is overlap, obviously, between what Matthew and I do. I mean, you guys see it all the time in terms of what Matthew's working on versus what I'm working on. And so the knowledge of this, the person needs the knowledge of the things that both Matthew and I are working on. So to the extent that person has time, Matthew knows that they're there for him to have assist him. I hope that answered your question. And if not, Matthew, maybe you
maybe I'll just add, because I think Joaquin's question may be a little more specific just as far as what this person would do outside of the work that you and I do. And it's a much lower level position, Joaquin, than Bob and I have. It's an administrative support position. So their primary responsibility is scheduling,
You're talking about the executive assistant, or you said administrative assistant?
Well, that position that you're recommending to bring back.
The
Yeah, okay.
executive assistant.
How would
position.
how the position will actually benefit, the city to have them, to have the person, to come back?
Yeah, so maybe the simplest answer then is what this person does is they take some of the lower level administrative tasks that Bob and I have to do ourselves. So that frees up our time to take on the higher level and more challenging tasks instead of us spending our time and our higher skill sets and higher wages on lower level tasks that someone else could do. So they take on lower level tasks that, calendaring, scheduling meetings, coordinating meetings, handling administrative tasks like processing contracts and processing invoices and reconciliation of finances, things that we can do and we do when we need to, but it removes those lower level tasks from the work we do so we can focus on the higher level tasks and projects.
Okay.
And Joaquin, my experience, you hire the right person. And boy, do you want to check references and stuff, but you hire the right person to find out what they can really do, really is awesome. But also they're exempt. So it means they can be part of meetings,
Yes.
but it's
And-
And they can work longer hours,
Right.
or weird hours without it triggering overtime and things
Right.
like
So
that.
if you're not exempt, right, you're hourly. So if you work overtime, you get paid more. You're exempt, you get a better base salary. However, yeah, sometimes you put in the extra hours, it's so you get better paid, but it's a much higher responsibility because it's confidential.
Yes.
And you can't talk about things going on with your friends who might be in the unions. It's like it's a certain burden. You got to have a certain there's a nuance, and it's you want someone who can handle that, and and know how to handle the relationships, in the organizations. That, oh yeah, let me just go to this, administrative assistant and get some scoop, some inside info. And it's like someone's got to be really good with confidential information. So
And that's
no.
where the reference checks come in.
Oh yeah, big time. So
And I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Maybe you are, but just in case you're not. So right in our current situation, I would say, argue we're in transition.
Yeah.
So you may not know this, but the current person in that position is actually working half-time in Lisa's department and
right, no, I do know
half-time
that.
in this position. And this was kind of transitional because Matthew and I needed the support, but we hadn't gotten back to this point of fully reinstating the position. So it is this situation where actually Lisa is it's not me right now who's down a full-time position. Lisa's actually sacrificed for the good of the team, and she's down a half position, and we get it half and half is the way it's working right now.
Hey, I got a quick question, Bob. I appreciate what you said about, and God knows if I've seen this differently in other organizations, but that, yeah, you want to share this executive assistant with Matthew, maybe another department head or two, because that's your culture of, hey, we're in this together, we're sharing certain resources. Do you think to preserve that culture, not that someone can't change it, but to put that in the job description that this person does, is shared, so that someone else coming along some other time.
It may be in there.
Could
We'll
maybe
check that.
yeah,
Lisa and I will look at that.
Because I love that, but we all know how quickly someone can say, this person's mine only. And well, anyway, yeah. So I'm just thinking, maybe you could add a little bit.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
Protection around that culture piece, which I really like.
Yeah, and generally, of
awesome.
course, we like job descriptions that are as flexible as possible, but that's a constant tension, of course. But we'll look at that and see what the language says. I don't know actually what it says, to be honest with you. We'll have to look.
Yeah, or you might feel, no, don't do that. But anyway, depends.
This position also represents at times the city manager's office on committees within the city, so that there is ample room for this person to be involved and to be active and represent Matthew and Bob and actually all the analysts too. This person actually works for, even though their primary responsibility is the city manager and doing all the scheduling and all the important things that need to be done, this person in theory and in practice in the past has supported all of the city manager's office. So.
Hey, these titles can be very misleading. Before I came in, I said, oh yeah, clerk, Jessica clerk. Oh, okay. She files some papers, maybe what the hell she does. I said, man, she seems to really know a lot about government, everything, right? Because I was totally unfamiliar with that role in most city governments,
City clerk is a classic, local government position, very highly regarded.
And it's a real misnomer
one of the originals.
Yeah. But if you're
Exactly.
coming from the outside, it sounds clerical.
Exactly.
Anything but. It is a highly professional position.
And boy, was I embarrassed to say, oh, wait a minute. Did I get that wrong?
And I'll just say it, since we're here, we have one of the best clerks in the country.
No kidding. No kidding.
Matthew.
And I'm not exaggerating. Jessica is incredible.
That's right. Your ears don't have to burn, Jessica. We're saying it right front of you. We're saying it right in front of you.
So any other questions? That is the reinstatement of positions. And again, we will bring it with mid-year. So there is the cost affiliated with this go hand in hand with our recommendations.
Got it. All right.
Okay, so moving on. Creation of new classifications. I will tackle these. However, I will often defer to Matthew and Bob on their expertise on some of these positions because they are a constant conversation amongst all department heads. So they're currently in discussion right now. The job specs are being developed because we want to make sure that we are actually encompassing all of the needs that are happening right now. The first one is a relatively simple one. Currently, we do have a vacancy in our associate planner. As you all know, Brittany left, and Jill has a vacancy in associate planner. What she would like to do is she's looking at her department and reorganizing, is she would like to create a new classification called assistant planner, which is an entry level planner, which actually then kind of steeps her department with room to grow. So this classification actually already is funded because we have the associate planner funded. So in creating this classification, Jill would underfill her current vacancy. So that is the first new classification we'd like to, and probably the easiest because assistant planner is very prevalent in our like jurisdictions. It's something that you will see normally in other cities because there is a series of assistant, associate, senior. Sorry, my watch decided I said Siri. And so this job spec will be developed. And again, this is one of the new classifications that is currently funded, as Jill's position is currently in the budget and is now a vacancy.
So I don't want to, so I might be a little confused here. So just to make sure I understand. So you're saying there will not be an increase in FTE here? Because
this is a replacement, but she wants to lower the position.
Okay.
It's a new classification. I'm sorry, I called it a new position, but it's actually a new classification.
That's what I thought you meant. So great. We're actually saving money and we're giving someone a chance to really get roomed into a expertise working under one of the best planners in the county. So
we get somebody that we could actually groom all the way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos to Jill for being willing to do that. That's awesome. So great.
So the next position, the next classification is a housing coordinator that we are considering. This is actually a result of the different conversations we've been having in the community with housing. It's been talked about in numerous discussions and the need that's arisen with the housing crisis that we are experiencing, of course, that the Bay Area is experiencing, we know that we need a dedicated person, incumbent, to actually tackle all the housing projects or future housing projects or plans or programs that come into the city. We'd like to center them. And so by creating a classification, and right now we're calling it housing coordinator, but again, it's in development, but this will actually assist the city in really centrifying all the work we're doing, being more organized and structured. It will have a direct line to the community development director, but also a dotted line to the city manager's office, because there's constant collaboration when it comes to housing between those two departments. So this is what we're considering for the housing coordinator. And I'm sure I will leave it open if Matthew or Bob would like to add anything to that.
No, do you guys have any questions? I agree, this one, in terms of new needs, I think this one speaks for itself. It's housing. We get it. And so as we come out of the pandemic and started to prioritize the way we maybe start to grow as we come out of this, and what our needs were to fulfill the council's priorities, I mean, this one I think speaks for itself. And as Lisa said, it would be in the community development department reporting to Jill.
I think the only thing I'd add is, we've filled this function a couple of times with really high caliber consultants. But at some point, to make this a priority for the city and continue to move it forward, having a staff member that has that expertise, that is privy to everything going on in the city and has those relationships in the community and is thinking about this all the time on behalf of our city, I think will help to continue to move things forward.
So here's a question I have. I know we currently have a relatively newly appointed contractor in that position, right? And it's someone who is very experienced, well-known. I remember when we had our meetings with Mid-Penn and Mercy that, yeah, they knew her. And she knew all the ropes and how everything works. And of course, we have to post any new position that we create. Do we anticipate that our contractor might be someone who might want to apply for this? Or we don't know?
Probably not.
I'll say no. She's retired from a very long and extensive career with government.
She probably can't even go back into PERS.
Yeah, probably. So unfortunately, no. But and so this position would replace that responsibility, but I'm sure there'd be some overlap to transition some of the work that's going on before we cut them loose.
Yeah, so I'll definitely be interested in seeing a job description for that. And I guess the question arises, the person who we now have on contract, what do they work? Half time, 50% time? Or what would you say?
I think it's probably quarter time, isn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows. It's really based on what we're working on. So I think she has probably worked more the last couple of weeks because of a project that she's working on that is intensive and has a deadline. Once that's done, it probably scales back a little bit. That's the advantage of a consultant, right? You scale them up and you scale them down as you need to.
They're not interested in working more hours than quarter time?
Well, I think she could be working more. I think Jill, when Jill thought about it, she was just trying to be judicious and thought, at the very least, I want to get someone that I can get 10 hours. I mean, it was not an easy person to find, and she works through a firm. But then she also came with another individual who works for that firm. So we're actually getting two people. So maybe their hours are more than quarter time. I would have to check with Jill. But as Matthew said, it's going to ebb and flow with the workload.
Well, they actually have more than one client that they're working for.
Yeah,
that firm does. Oh yeah, for sure.
I have a question. Has the city ever had is this the first time that they actually contracted with someone to be like a housing coordinator?
No, we had someone else who was a former county housing
we had somebody in 2019, and they would have been fantastic, but they ended up dealing with some health issues and had to pull away.
So we never really
And
got to
before that,
see.
there was nobody else. City has not contracted anybody else.
I don't believe the city's ever had any sort of
No.
dedicated housing function. And honestly, a city of our size, it's a little bit atypical, but I think it's very justified with the need that we have in our community right now.
So I just think, well, you know what, I just think we should take a really hard look before we switch from a really good experienced contractor situation
Yeah.
to a permanent position, just because it is hard to find somebody, you know, and like you said, we get some benefits. It's sometimes two people. And just really, you know what I'm saying, talk amongst yourselves a little more about this, because getting someone who's great, you know, like it's worth paying for, and you know, they'll
Right.
get more salary instead of, you know, maybe benefits. They don't need that piece.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, no, I agree. We think the need's there for a full-time person, but you're right. A consultant has certain advantages. I think, and it might be hard to find someone. As Lisa said, we're still developing the job class, and we're still deciding what the pay range would be. So we don't know that either. But remember, the person is still a planner too.
Yeah.
We want to get someone who has the housing specialty, but most likely they still came up through the planning profession. So they still are a planner, you know, slash housing specialist in the planning department. And so the needs are there, just body wise in Jill's department. That much we know. She's understaffed.
I'll also just make sure it's clear. The assistant planner position that Lisa's talking about, we have an immediate need for that.
Yes.
These other three positions right now, what we're asking is for support to create the classifications.
Right.
And then we'll come back later to talk about when those get filled and
Right.
when's an appropriate time to hire for those.
All right. And we might really need to figure out you know, recruit someone from a town who has amazing low-income housing, and which is my nice way of saying, yeah, we might need to steal someone from a city who's great at that.
Oh.
Entice them over, you know, encourage them.
We've been very good at attracting talent ever since Lisa got here. So we'll continue that.
Right.
We'll continue that work.
But I mean, that's the kind of background we're really looking for, right, Joaquin? Someone who really knows the ins and outs, working with, you know, the folks like Mid-Penn and, you know, et cetera, and can actually see in their minds what that end product is going to look like.
Yeah, that's why, you know, I mean, I do
experience.
see the benefit of the contractor person right now, because they know, because of the knowledge they have.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, looking ahead, you know, how long are we going to have this position available for? Right? I mean, with I know we have to build so many houses in the next 6 years. Right? So is that position gonna end there, or is it gonna continue?
And that's what we're figuring out as well. And keep in mind that even if we create this classification, the consultant will stay on. We could do a whole recruitment and not find anyone that meets our needs.
Right.
And we can decide not to fill it and to remain with the consultant.
That's a good point.
This just gives us a flexibility, because if the dream housing coordinator came on, somebody who worked for the county, who knows all the players, who's wanting to come and live on the coast side because, you know, whatever reason, we now have an opportunity to put them into a full-time position. But if we don't find anyone, we are not, you know, I never advise my bosses to do anything that would be detrimental to the projects we're working on. So if that means keeping the consultant versus hiring a full-time person, that's what we would do.
I don't have the
So-
benefit of the consultant, like you just said, to be part of the recruitment and interviewing process for that position. So, you know, we make sure
Yes,
that.
I'm sure that they would participate in that and help
Yeah,
support that.
okay.
But we'll pass those comments on to Jill. Again, Jill's working with Lisa on the job description. And as I said, the person should have planning skills too. So to Joaquin's point, you know, what if we don't have this need 5-6 years from now? You know, we want the person to have to be basically the same level as a senior planner, the planning work is not going to go away. I mean, again,
Right.
the department is at bare minimal now in terms of workload. And so that good comments. We want to make sure that the job class is kind of interchangeable with both planning skills and housing specialty skills. So we'll pass that along. And Lisa, of course, is hearing your comments right now as well.
Great. Okay, so two more
Thank you very much
more
for that.
positions. No, thank you for your patience in answering all our questions and
What-
making sure we
That's
understand
what
it.
this is for. So economic development coordinator, as you notice, there's a trend to make this rather simple. I use coordinator in all the descriptions, but as we develop the job specifications, the titles might change, although the premise behind the positions won't. So the economic development coordinator actually is a result of the work that the Coastside Recovery Initiative started in 2021. Right, currently, we do have another consultant working with staff on the CRI or CRI. I'm not really good at acronyms, I apologize. So this position would continue that work that was initiated by CRI and would provide direction and project leadership for activities and programs of the city's economic development efforts. And it would be supporting businesses, nonprofits, workforce development. And this one, we are actually considering, to your point, Joaquin, about the housing, we are actually considering looking at what we would probably call, this is for the lack of a better term at this point, a permanent temporary. Because that way, if this is, a special projects term, it would be an economic development coordinator, but if, the extent of their work kind of played out over 3 years, and after that, we kind of could maintain it within the staff we have, then we were looking at potentially creating something that would term out after a certain amount of time. Similar to what San Mateo County has. We have a very different retirement system, so we have to work a little bit differently, but we're trying to be creative to meet the needs of the city while still not overburdening us in the future years. If by chance this position kind of evolves to the point where existing staff, or we don't necessarily need this classification, we might need it. We want to keep our options open, but for that reason, we're discussing these options.
Okay.
Matthew, do you have anything to add just about the vision behind the position? It is a recommendation in the final CRI report, but Matthew, do you have any color to add to this idea?
No, I think, we've relied heavily on the chamber historically to kind of support certain areas of economic development, working with the businesses and gathering feedback from the businesses and supporting the businesses. But as Lisa said, we're the time right now where we're in this recovery, we've done the recovery initiative, and there's some big recommendations that could fundamentally change the economy here on the coast side. It's really important that to move those recommendations forward, that we have somebody that's focused on that work. And so a standalone position is one way that we could accomplish that and get those additional resources to really focus on it. But then again, to Lisa's point, we don't know how long that need will exist, and we may get ourselves to a point where we don't need that much focus. I think it's something that will always be a responsibility of the city, but again, the need will ebb and flow. And so one of the things we're looking at is either combining those responsibilities with something else, or having it be a limited term position that we can reevaluate without the long-term commitment we would normally have to a full-time staffer.
Right. Okay.
Joaquin, did you have any? I didn't want to move forward with the next one until I.
Nope, no question.
Okay. Okay, so the final classification you're looking at is what we would call a grants coordinator. Throughout the last year, we have actually found that we have a significant issue when it comes to the grants that the city is actually handling. And we have actually led an effort to try to find an agency to help us manage our grants as we have in the past. Traditionally, we haven't had the service, from what I understand, and I'll let Matthew and Jessica speak to this since they're both experts in this. We haven't had the service that we needed to help us both not only manage grants, but also seek out different grants that the city might be eligible for, and in assisting us with the applications to make sure we get it right. So we talked about it amongst ourselves in department heads, and we looked at the fact that we do need a position, someone that can coordinate, somebody that can help kind of be the master keeper of the grants programs. It would engage one person where they have to kind of learn bits of the city, but also it would be beneficial to us because they would actually have a vested interest in being a part of the city to look at grants and know the different programs we have and know the different people who are involved and what we would be qualified for, and actually managing it from creation to submission to hopefully award. Matthew and Jessica, I don't know if you want to, I'm sure you want to add some more.
Yeah, I can kind of expand on that. So, we've had a contract with Townsend for many years, and the original purpose of that contract was grants and then legislative support. And what we've found through them, and then I'll explain some other experiences we've had with other agencies, is their strength really lies in the legislative support and lobbying and providing that type of support related to grants. They don't provide the hands-on grants management. They don't write grants on behalf of the city. And so our work with them has really shifted towards legislative support and that side of grant making. We decided to look for an agency that was much more focused on writing grants, and we piloted with one earlier this year. And I think what we've determined is that our needs as a city are not going to be served by a large consultant agency. We need somebody that is probably an individual that has kind of a generalist skill set, that's a good writer, a good project manager, that can really take a hold of and focus on these grants. And this also fits into what Lisa was describing earlier. Right now, we know there's this huge opportunity, all these different grants and all these different funding opportunities at the federal and state levels. And we need to really poise ourselves to take advantage of those grants. But as someone who, worked on several grants towards the end of last year, and some of my staff worked on some grants towards the end of last year, to do a really effective grant application, you can almost not have time to work on anything else. I mean, it is such a focused and concerted effort that if a person is working on other projects, it is really, really hard for them to create the quality that's needed unless you put in lots and lots and lots of extra hours, which is fine for a grant or two, but a person can't do that on a sustainable basis. And so where we landed is, rather than, we actually have funding in our budget this year to hire a consultant. And what we've determined is that's not a good use of that money, because the consultants don't get us where we need to get. And really a position that maybe is term as well for the next 3 years allows us to build someone up, see what kind of return on investment they can create for themselves, and see what the grants landscape looks like in the next 3 years, and hopefully take advantage of all the programs that are out there right now. Jessica works a lot with the grants, right? So I think she probably has some feedback on this as well.
Matthew summed it up pretty well. Just to add to what he mentioned, we do have an internal grants committee that's made up of a pretty good chunk of staff, and we meet frequently to go over all the various funding opportunities and to discuss things like getting a grant writer and trying to, interview different firms that are recommended to us and go through that process. And so over the past, year or so, we've been working on that. And at our last meeting came to the determination that Matthew just explained. And outside of even some of the big state and federal grants, we're also aware that there are a ton of other grants that would be available to us in some of our smaller projects, but we don't have anyone on staff that has the capability to seek out some of those smaller grants. One example is Public Works is submitting for a cow recycle grant for a program that we do. And so, we will likely get that money, and it's a small amount, but those small grants add up over time. And so if we do have someone on staff that's able to, one, help us with, the big federal and state grants that we do qualify for, but then also to seek out those other opportunities that could be beneficial for the city for things that we're already doing, then that helps us in the long run. And we would still keep Townsend for the purposes of grants advocacy, in the sense that, if we're going for a huge Caltrans grant, they can hop over to Caltrans, state office and do some advocacy on our behalf. But we do need additional help when it comes to the management and the writing and the follow through and all of the after effects if we are then awarded the grant.
So thank you, by the way, for all that elaboration to understand this position. So would you say this as part of that position, what we're looking for is someone who they themselves are a excellent grant writer, I presume, right? So they know that part. And I'm thinking in terms of what you're talking about, Jessica, also that, we do have a number of programs. So, we have a recycling program. We're just starting a first responder pilot program for 7 months that we have a combined $150,000 funding. I would strongly encourage that this kind of person would be someone who is an internal consultant who knows how to help those existing, because that's what grantors look for, right? They look for programs that are successful, but you're looking to scale them up, right? Or, increase their time. So someone who's an expert at helping when we first start like a pilot program to help it get set up in a way for success, but then it makes it eligible, who has that kind of experience as well would be fantastic. My last question, which might just be a foolish question. I've always wondered, if we have a position like this, is there any way to build in almost like a commission? If they can get X number of grant money, they get a certain kind of bonus. Not many positions can be set up like that, but this is someone who's bringing in revenue. There's not so many positions we have, right? That it makes it very unique. I mean, is there any
Might
way
be tough under civil service.
Yeah.
that was what I was thinking. So
Well,
it is
my
something-
thinking, Robert, if you don't mind, is if we make it a term position, the incentive is to have that ROI, and we'll make this thing permanent,
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or to bring in a contract writer here and there with that incentive. That, who would work for this person. It's just something
I think you can do it. I think you could probably do that with consultants and try to add that type of bonus. But yeah, harder with a civil service position.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering,
But-
I know, yeah.
Yeah, but I like Matthew's thinking. I think this is one that we're thinking is a candidate position for like a limited term, say 3 years, see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I might revisit that with you all because I know we've had that experience working with, like contract recruiters, and we're trying to get recruiters to bring in more diversified candidate slates. And if they can bring in 20% more underrepresented groups, more women, then they got a bonus. And so anyway, I was just curious about that, how that one works in the public sector. And two, is there any way to super incentivize someone with that skill level to bring in the money? So, okay.
So last of all, I included a note that I just wanted to remind you that we are creating these classifications, but at this point in time, they are unfunded. We would just like the support in creating the classifications and bringing them to the council.
And
So
we're planning to come back, mid-year is planned for March 15th. Is that right, Lisa?
actually, March 1st.
March 1st, we're going to come back with mid-year. and
Right.
we'll be able to see what we can afford then. And then the next opportunity would be when we bring the budget back in June for 22, 23.
Yeah, that's where I was, yeah, that's where I was bringing up the,
We are coming 2 weeks earlier, because we usually come the second meeting in March, but we wanted to do it March 1st.
March 1st. Great.
yeah, I think the
So,
more we can simultaneously talk about this in tandem with, the finance, midterm and subcommittee. Because then we could present a comprehensive review to council and anticipate any questions that might come up, from full council on impact on everything else we're trying to do, budget wise, right? So we spend money here, does that mean we can't spend money somewhere else? And just be able to answer all those questions.
It always means that.
It always means that, right?
When you
So,
spend money here, you can't spend it over there. That's a true statement.
and coming out of COVID, yeah, we put a lot of things off,
Ken's
right?
motto.
We've suspended a lot of things, CPI, this and that. So yeah, so it'll be a very interesting conversation because we're, be a great conversation. So good.
Do you have any other questions now that we've kind of gone through everything? We would ask that at the end of this meeting that we ask for your support, considering all the things that you've asked of us, obviously including job specs when we present to the council, answering some of the questions that came up during your the HR committee's support on presenting all these classification and compensation
Yeah.
changes.
Absolutely. And let Joaquin and I know if there's some, if we need to meet again to look at some of the things that we just, talked about. I really want to set it up for success. And,
Good question. From the three positions, the last three positions that you wanna create, how much money will it be saved if you make those full-time positions? What is the cost of
from contractor to full-time.
Yeah,
We haven't compared it to the cost currently of the consultants. We can get that for you. The impact, if we actually just a rough estimate, using a current existing salary schedule for future fiscal year impact would be about $600,000 to $618,000 for 3 positions. And that includes full benefits, and 30%, our benefits are 30% of the overall cost of our employees. So,
But to Joaquin's question, that doesn't include, in other words, what are we saving because we're no longer using contract, we're no longer paying contractors? Can we subtract from the 618,000 what we're currently paying on contractors? Because would be.
Yeah, we could show that.
Yeah,
I think for the grants position, there's not much. There would be the Townsend. I think it's only like 12,000 a year.
Well, no, I wouldn't, because Townsend,
Townsend still does the advocacy.
focus, but we have $50,000 in our budget this year for a contractor that we're not going to use for that
Yeah.
purpose because we're not finding somebody.
there you go.
That's an example. We have been paying for economic
Erica.
development support and then the housing contractors. So
We
certainly
could show,
can
yeah,
pull
we
those
could show that in the
numbers.
staff report. So what we
Don't
would
you
save
think
by
what-
not
don't you
having
think-
Erica's contract, not having the housing
Yeah, I mean,
consultant, not
wouldn't that
having, we show
help
that.
say that, no, it's not 600, it's actually
Sure.
400, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It builds a nice argument that
Yeah,
because
that was a really good question.
we were not planning on, thank you, Joaquin. We're not planning on getting rid of those contracting services. So I think that really helps. Great.
So Robert, to your question, I'm looking at the calendar. I mean, it's our intention to bring this back when we bring the mid-year back, and that's March 1st. So
Yes, a lot of time.
it might be challenging to have another HR subcommittee. We could certainly meet when we meet with you on your one-on-ones. We could update you there on the
Yeah,
progress
okay,
as we
yeah.
move towards March 1st. But yeah, we would like, just a simple motion and second that the subcommittee is recommending this to the full council.
with the
Good.
changes.
I move that the subcommittee recommends this to the full council. Can I get a second?
second.
Sure. Thank you, Bob.
I guess that means you voted too, right?
Yeah, that's good. And I would mostly, you know, when you get that table together with all the comparison cities, I think it would be great to have a table that just really shows that we're not overstaffed. Because sometimes we get those opinions from those
No, we do.
who think that because we've increased staff compared to X number of years ago. And then but that just means we're crazily understaffed. But for the level of services that we provide, people sometimes take that for granted, the level of quality services that we provide.
Yeah, we can provide that. That's
And
also
then-
in the budget, you know, a table that shows going back like 10 years, what our FTEs have been. And yeah, if anything, we're probably a little bit lower now than we were 5 or 8 years ago, I'm guessing. We'll
And that's why,
provide-
that's why I was asking for, you know, a column with the populations of some of those other cities. And then to your point, what does it look like if we subtract out their full service police? You know, even because when I was looking at those numbers, even if we took those numbers out, it still looked to me like, wow, we are pretty,
we have under 40 employees.
we're
What do we
pretty,
have?
s- we're
38?
pretty, yeah,
Lisa?
we're pretty efficient and slender.
7.
So,
37.
yeah, but I'd love to sort of be able to, you know, if you think that might work and help, if you think that might help to have that kind of, so anyone could look at that and say, oh, wow. I don't know why people are complaining about 40 people, 42, whatever it is, even with the additions.
No, I think it's an important argument, and we'll certainly make that. I also think it's an important argument to make that, I mean, I hesitate to say we're growing. I'm not sure if that's confirmed or not, but the service demand is growing. And so again, we don't hire employees for the sake of hiring employees.
Right.
We bring in taxpayer dollars, and those have been doing well, property tax, sales tax, TOT. And then the community demands the services, and we're seeing that the community is demanding the services. And so the way we provide those services is we hire new employees.
We remind people of those. Wow, look what happened when we had 2 days of heavy rain. 2 days. Well, we're going to, due to climate change, we're going to see more of that. And everyone was freaked. Hey, can't you put some people to watch up on Highway 9?
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
who?
right. I mean, it was some crazy stuff, but yeah, with these, you don't know where flooding's going to occur until flooding occurs because water goes where it wants to. But, you know, we have these issues here. We have emergency issues. Plus, so yeah, you know, it's the level of service. Plus, we are spending money to make money. Some of these positions will help us make money, economic development people, grant writing, et cetera, right? So yeah, we're going to spend some of this money to make money. And I just think those are the strongest education pieces to just sort of put out there and repeat a few times and get it all set up for success when we get it out to council, proactively anticipating public comments as well as council questions. So good. All righty. Thank you. Thank you. I think we went over a little bit there. So
Not
appreciate
much. We did pretty well, I think.
Pretty darn good.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks,
you having
everyone.
me.
I think that is the end of the meeting.
Yeah, no, it was a lot to cover. When I originally asked, what are we going to do? Oh, no, we're just going to do a staff report. Then I saw the memo. I said, wow, okay, that's a little
Yeah.
more than there's a fair amount, you know, to digest.
These have been accumulating. That's what I said.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
these have been
yeah.
accumulating, and yeah, there was 11 things that need to be done. So we thought we should package them all together.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for all the work in putting that together. It's
Yeah.
good
Thank you.
staff work. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everyone.
for the class.
Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks, everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night, see you.
Bye.
See ya.